Hey, welcome to BJB Banner today. As we promised, we were going to get to this roundtable on the proposed changes to the NCAA basketball tournament. Sounds like it's pretty much a done deal. So we can just say changes to the NCAA basketball tournament. And so today we've got Mike Rochon with us and Joe Sopchik with us of Joe's of Classic J's. Joe's been doing a lot of work lately. So first, you may be like, "Wow, this points per player per number thing had to take some time." Uh, well, Joe is a new father, so congratulations.
Thank you. Thank you. Yeah, it's a whirlwind. So content's been a little bit down lately, but we're settling in and everyone's happy and healthy, so we're in good shape.
Well, that's awesome. Speaking of healthy, we want to give a shout out to our buddy Mike Schmitty, who's been on the show before, who's going to join us today, but he's going through some health stuff right now. So everybody keep him in your prayers and give him a shout out. And I think, hopefully he'll be back to 100% soon. Okay, so first off, just want to talk about RTI Threads. Go to rtithreads.com. Check out all the Jays gear they have to offer. They are the exclusive apparel provider of Blue Jay Banner as well. And as I've mentioned several times, with a lot of events coming up like runs, golf tournaments, all that kind of stuff, they're a great place to go to get your t-shirts, polos, whatever, and get them designed with your design, or they'll make a logo for you. So check them all out. That's rtithreads.com. All right. So we're just going to start. I'll just briefly give you a thumbnail of what it is. So if you haven't heard, and this has been rumored for, I don't know, probably last 3 years, and it's never been gone through, but it sounds like this year it's pretty much a done deal. And they'll make an announcement here probably in the next couple of weeks. But basically, the NCAA tournament's going to expand from 68 to 76 teams. And you may be saying, okay, well, that's 8 more teams. It's not 96. All right. So it's not crazy. How's that going to work? So basically, how it's going to work is you're going to have 12 play-in games now instead of 4. And the teams that'll be playing in the bottom 12 teams will play in, and then the at-large, like last 4 in, there'll be last 12 in now, basically. Okay. So those teams will be in the playing game, um, and they'll play down. So basically, yet you got to look at is the 16 seeds right now. We have 6 of them, right? Well, next year we're going to have 8. And then on the 15 line we're going to have 6. So that'll be where the 6 games come in. 4 on the 16 line. Everybody in the 16 line is going to be in a playing game, and 2 in the 15 line. So what that does basically is drop everybody down a notch. It's almost like exactly a full seed line. I don't know if it exactly comes out that way, but so now the 14s are going to be 15s. The 13s will be 14s. The 12s will be 13s. And your 12s are going to be probably all playing games. And then we got to remember the fact I don't know how the Pac-12 is working yet, but we got to remember that will take away one bid that we had before. So at any rate, that's how it's going to work. Right now, I believe the games are all Tuesday. Still, it's going to be Tuesday, Wednesday. So there'll be 6 games on Tuesday, 6 games on Wednesday. All right. So, Mike, your thoughts?
I'm not a big fan of it. I think the NCAA tournament is really, there was no need to change. I understand from a money perspective. Because that's all it is. It's more opportunity to get the NCAA money. You're gonna instead of 4 playing games, you're upping it, and you're going to get gate, and you're going to get all this stuff now, and concessions, and all this stuff, and it's all it is a way to make more money. And it's I don't know. There was no part of me this past NCAA tournament that needed to see Auburn play another game, or Indiana or Oklahoma. Like I didn't miss them. I didn't need to see them. So that's kind of where I'm at with it. I thought the NCAA tournament was fine the way it was, and I wish it would have stayed the same, but it's nowadays it's all about money. So
Well, that's a popular take, obviously. Joe, what do you think?
Yeah, I mean, I agree with basically everything Michael said. I think if the goal is to find a national champion, you have all of the conference champions are getting automatic bids, and then you have these at-large bids for basically the top 35-ish teams, prior to this expansion. I don't think the extra 8 teams that we're adding is necessary to find a national champion, right? I don't think it's teams that are necessarily deserving of having that opportunity based on what they did during the season. And I one thing I did to prepare for this, because this is just something I feel like has been underappreciated or under talked about, is kind of what you talked about with the seeds dropping on a lot of these lower seeds. So I kind of I did a full seed rundown of last year's tournament versus what it would be this year, what it would have been with the 76. And so I looked at, for each team, how would they have been affected by how would their positioning been affected by the new expansion? And so I looked at whether their seed would have changed, their seed line, and whether they would have had to play in the play-in or not. And so then based on those two factors, I was like, okay, was this team affected by the change, or were they unaffected, right? And so unaffected, of the 76 teams that would have been in the tournament, 48 of them were unaffected. Of those 48 teams, 39 of them were Power 6 conference teams. And the reason I use Power 6 is because I include Big East. And to me, I think for the purposes of this conversation, Mountain West deserves to be in it, because the Mountain West, if you look at their tournament history in 2022, 2023, 2024, 2025, they had at least 4 teams every year in the tournament. 2026, they only had 1, but they would have had 3 with the tournament expansion. So to me, for the purposes of this conversation, they are kind of a power conference team anyway. And so that means there were 9 mid or low majors that were unaffected by this. And those teams were Gonzaga, St. Mary's, St. Louis, Santa Clara, Miami of Ohio, and then the 4 16 seeds that would have had to play in anyway. So then you look at, okay, those are the unaffected teams by this change. The positively impacted teams, the teams that they're better for the change, were 8 teams, the 8 teams that get in. And those are based on the athletics. You can use whoever's, but based on the athletics projection, 7 of those teams were power conference teams, and 1 of them was a mid-major team, and that team was Tulsa. And then I looked at negatively impacted teams, the teams that had to play, that basically were moved down a seed line, so now they have to play a tougher first-round game, or they have to play in to get into the round of 64 when they didn't before. 0 of those teams were power conference teams of the 20 that were impacted, and all 20 were mid-major or low major. So basically what's happening is they're making it a lot more difficult for the Cinderella stories to take place. If you consider a Cinderella story being a mid-major or low major, making a run. I don't really count, an 11 seed like Texas making a run a Cinderella story. That's not, just because they're a low seed, that's not a Cinderella to me. So to me, it's going to be a lot more difficult to see those Cinderella runs, and that's one of the reasons I'm not all that excited about the tournament expansion, among a bunch of other things too.
Well, number one, it's really clear that Joe got the baby to sleep for a while, so he had time to do this. Number 2, you kind of open up 2 doors that I wanted to talk about with that breakdown, okay? And that was excellent. Number one of the reasons, and I don't think a lot of people are Maybe they have, I don't know. But I don't think the people I've talked to have talked much about this. There was a move, like, well, it maybe never got very far down the road, but there was definitely talk about maybe having 2 tournaments. Just having power tournament to be the national champion, and the other guys would be like 1A or whatever. By doing it, and I'm gonna spin this as like most people hate this whole deal, right? I'm gonna spin a couple of positives here. Okay, number one, so that's a positive that we've kept the tournament format basically, somewhat the same, and yet have appeased the power teams to get more power teams in, okay? And yet still gave the little guy the chance, okay? Albeit a tougher chance. So that's one. The second point you talked about was the teams dropping. I actually think if we go by last year, okay, what did we have? High Point? Really? That was the only team that really. Am I wrong? Am I missing somebody?
I
But I
think
think that's it.
that's
High
pretty
Point
much
was the only
it. Yeah.
team that really pulled an upset, right?
Yeah. The last 2 years have been pretty chalky.
And I'm not talking 7-10s or 6-11. I'm just talking, yeah. Okay, so think about it like this. Like, okay, so now with those teams dropping, let's just concentrate now on the 13 line. Okay, so 13s would play fours. Okay. Or 12. We could do 12s too. 12s would play fives. And that was always a common upset pick, right? You had your McNeese States and your High Points and teams like that, traditionally Belmont's teams that, could upset someone. Well, they're going to drop a seed line. So now, to me, the 4 is going to play a lot tougher game than they had before. And the 3 is going to play a lot tougher game than they had before. Because they're playing a legitimate team that could knock somebody off in most years. Now, was this year just an anomaly, or are we going to go back to the norm where, are we going to go to the norm where, every year you could go down to 12 and 13s and find teams that were, pretty good and really a shot if the matchup works for them to be able to win. So to me, I think this will bring more Cinderellas into it, not less. Anybody agree? Disagree?
I disagree on my first reaction. Because I think it goes both ways, right? Like if you're saying that now, uh, like a 4 seed would have had to play a 13 seed, and now they would have to play a 13 seed that's High Point, who was a 12 seed last year. That's who they would have had to play. It goes both ways, right? The High Point also has to play a better team than they had to in the first round last year. So to me, I think it's somewhat of a wash there. But it's going to make it overall tougher for, you know, I guess the way I would look at it is like you're going from a 4 seed probably being, I look at it from like a Vegas odds perspective. Like if they were going to be a 9-point favorite, maybe it's slightly smaller, maybe goes to like 8 because they're playing a tougher team now. But they're still going to be heavy favorites, right, in the first round. So, I thought about what your argument is there. Like I thought about that when I was like doing this like little breakdown, and I think there's probably it'll be interesting to see it play out. There might be a case where that happens. I think it's more or less a wash when you consider like the 4 seed has to play a better team, but also the 13 seed now is playing a better team than they would have as a 12 seed, if that makes sense.
What I was thinking though is most years, and I think you could go back to last year and say this was true too. Sometimes you only have, the ones and then there's a gap to the twos. I didn't think it was that way last year. I thought the ones, there was a little bit of a step down, but not much as they blended into the twos and some of the threes. But there's usually a pretty good step when you get to the threes and the fours and the fives. So those teams are pretty much the same night, and so there was my thinking of and everybody's using High Point because they're our most recent example, right? But a lot of years, and I don't know that that was a particularly good year. The one thing like last year that messed it up a little bit, if you will say that, was Miami getting an at-large.
Yeah.
A lot of years they're not getting an at-large.
Right.
They're winning their conference tournament, and then put it, let's say they lost their normal 5, 6 games. Well, then they're gonna be at 13. Well, that would be another really tough go.
It's actually funny. It would have been interesting to see where Miami of Ohio was seated if they had won their conference tournament as opposed to getting the at-large bid. Because I wonder if it would have actually been worse for them last year if they would have gotten a lower
I think
seed.
it would no, I think they were pretty solidly at 10, 11
You think
all
they were
year
10 or
long.
11?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah,
Because I mean,
they're
based on the fact that they gave them basically the last spot in the tournament as the at-large, and their metrics wouldn't have been that great compared to a lot of the bubble teams, I wonder
Yeah.
if they would have been
I
moved
think that
down.
was a deal where, I mean, obviously it's done by a vote and there's a lot of discussion. I'm not dismissing that, but it was basically like, okay, we've never left out a team with this record before, so we can't do it. So we got to put them in. That's a simple explanation that didn't come up that did not come up in the committee room, but it's in people's minds.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely.
Which morphs me to another point. We can throw all these things out now, and I wanna talk about, like, the at-larges, okay? I I'm I think we'll have a team are they gonna the interesting point's gonna be, are they gonna maybe draw the line and say, "We can't have a team in the NCAA tournament as an at-large with a losing record,"
Right.
you know? Are they gonna
It's
are
gonna,
they
yeah, because it's gonna come up. Because there's
Yeah.
going to be a team that has or 500, a losing record, but like their wins are going to be against, let's say it's an SEC school and they've beaten Florida and Alabama, and things like that, and their metrics are going to be off the charts. But then they're going to have a loss to LSU and somebody like that, and it's gonna be really really interesting. So not to go too much off topic here, but so then, I mean, this is going to really hurt, like the crown and NIT and things
Yeah.
like that,
Yeah. That's
like
another whole
it's,
point.
yeah, I mean, these postseason tournaments that, existed, like, you're losing out on the possibility of, some quality teams coming to play. And, I mean, obviously we would have loved Creighton to get to the finals of the crown, but the finals of Oklahoma and West Virginia was, two really good teams. Well, now you think they're in the NCAA tournament, so the crown loses them. So, how good is the crown going to be?
Well, Creighton might have won it then, Mike.
Right.
So
Right.
the interesting thing about like your point about maybe they set a line where you have to have a winning record. So then what happens is teams from the SEC and the Big Ten, et cetera, they're going to schedule really light non-conference schedules
Yeah.
like
Yeah.
Nebraska has because now you don't want to like Creighton last year. We finished what was it 15 and 16 or 15 and 17, 15 and 16 I think in the regular season. So if you load your non-conference up with cupcakes, then you don't lose 5 non-conference games, and all of a sudden you're NCAA tournament eligible based on that kind of metric. So that I think that hurts the November December time of the season too, which would be unfortunate too. But you're right, like there will be new metrics to measure these teams and to draw lines in the sand somewhere. You would think. But yeah, it's just you're gonna see teams that make the tournament that have conference records of like 6-12 or something like that. And
Yeah,
to me,
and
that's
that's why
crazy.
your point about, playing a bunch of cupcakes, like, that's why they've never come out with a record thing because they don't want teams to do that,
Right.
and they
Right.
want to judge teams on their strength of schedule. I think, though
The strength of schedule stuff is frustrating too because at some point you got to win the games you play, and like you can play the
Right.
toughest schedule in the country, but if you don't win your games, like I don't see how you're worthy to play in the NCAA tournament. And that's this difficulty I have with teams that are 6-12 in the SEC being, considered good enough to to have a chance to play for a national championship, right? Like that's the goal, is to find a national champion. That to me is I don't think is right, but
Yeah, well, that's always been the tough part. You got a team that's 24-9 and didn't play anybody, but you got a team that's 17-14 and played an unbelievable schedule.
well, so yeah,
How do you balance that? You know, what's fair? What is fair? And the committee used to penalize that team that's 17 or that's 24-9 for not playing anybody. I mean, there was an example. It was South Carolina, and I want to say Vanderbilt several years ago. Vanderbilt was like 18-15. They were right on the edge of like, okay, that's too many losses type thing. And South Carolina was 24-9. Same conference. And their conference results were somewhat similar, but the committee kicked South Carolina out because they played a tougher schedule, you know? So, I don't know. And that I do think what helps, with that is, you know, for an example, the players' era, because
Yeah.
teams wanna play in that because they wanna get this money, and so now you're playing a really tough, no matter what your draw is, you're playing a tough schedule, you know?
yeah, yeah.
I mean,
Assuming the players era has staying power, which we'll
yeah,
see.
well, there again, as we say with LIV, eventually, you know, the money runs out, right? Or doesn't run out. It's just like, okay, are we just gonna throw money away here?
Yeah,
Um, and yeah, that's always a factor. But you know, look at Creighton's players there last year. I mean, they probably got the easiest draw they could have gotten, and they still had to play Iowa State, you know? So you're gonna play really good teams. So, you know, maybe, and you know what just happened now the other day with Duke, was signed the deal with Amazon. Like, so now they had to go to ESPN, get their blessing, and then ESPN said, "Well, you can't play in the era." Okay, we won't do that. So we'll play in one of your tournaments, the Maui or whatever. And so, you know, we're starting to see this thing churn up a little bit. So hopefully that will do it. It actually, if you're a power school, I mean, it can be done, but it's kind of almost tough not to play decent non-conference anymore, you know?
Right.
Like,
Yeah.
I've noticed on the metrics in Warren Nolan, like, you used to see some 300s and high 290. You don't see as many of those anymore, just because it's harder to, like, if you wanna, because the way they've made it scheduling now, it's such an advantage to play in some sort of tournament because you get the extra games,
Right.
you know?
yeah,
It's hard to schedule. You know, eventually, again, those mid-majors run out and say, "No, we're not gonna play it," you know?
yeah. Nebraska still managed to just play a pretty light non-conference last year. I don't know if they played any teams that made the tournament. I can't think of any off the top of my head. I know they played Oklahoma, Kansas State, and Creighton, but those are 3 teams that didn't make the NCAA tournament.
Joe,
So,
I really so appreciate you in the greatest season ever of you still
Yeah.
bashing. That's
And
awesome.
it's
Awesome
fantastic.
work. Awesome work. You found a niche.
Yeah. That's
Yeah, they
awesome.
didn't, yeah. So, yeah.
I was curious
We've got
on
we've got 2 teams announced on our schedule. We know 3. We know 4 really, one's a mid-major, but we know 4 on our schedule for next year. They're way tougher than anything Nebraska played last year, which is crazy, and we don't even know what we're doing in the era, you know?
yeah. Yeah. Yeah, I'm curious, not to change the topic, but I'm curious, like, on the expansion talk, if what your perspective is for both of you guys as Creighton fans, and, like, the likelihood of whether you would travel to watch Creighton play in a play-in game if they played on, Tuesday, Wednesday in the NCAA tournament, as opposed to just going straight to the first round on Thursday or Friday.
Um, I'll answer this really snarky. If some sponsor wants to pony up the dough, I'll go. I gotta say this, if they do okay, so they do Dayton. I've always wanted to go to Dayton just to see it, okay?
Yeah.
But if they go the other site, which they're talking about doing is like Hinkle, which would be Dayton and the NCAA people could go back and forth between Dayton and Indy very easily. It's pretty close together, like 100 miles from 'em. If they went to Hinkle, I mean, Hinkle's so cool, man. I'd love to go back there and watch a game. So I would yeah, and it's Indy's kind of on the edge, but it is drivable, to talk about costs. So I would probably yeah. The problem there is you're gonna go, let's say they're the top, they were the one that made it in easiest, but it's in the playing game. So you're already thinking, well, we're gonna win this game. Then where am I gonna go? You know? Now maybe they will like try and keep those teams as close to those sites. That's gonna be even harder though. It's gonna be
It
even
really,
harder
it's
with
gonna
all
be
the
really
games there, and
hard.
they're gonna have to relax some of the principles too.
Yeah.
Then it would be worth it. Like you're playing Indy, oh, well, your regionals in St. Louis. Oh, that's perfect, right?
Yeah.
You know? Yeah. Good point though. What about you, Mike?
Uh, well, I'll probably say no, I wouldn't, because I hate to travel. So, and traveling's terrible now, and it's only gonna probably get worse. So I'm the old man, so I'm gonna say no.
Yeah.
Um, but I will say, just watching the first four or whatever, I don't know what it'll be called now, but I mean, Dayton, that environment seems really cool. So that would be something to go kind of check out. It seems like a really cool environment, and things like that. So that would be kind of pulling me, but I like sitting at home and then watching these games on TV.
Well,
Yeah.
I've
Yeah.
always
The
said that there is something about to that. Like when Creighton doesn't make tournament like last year, I'm almost excited because now I can watch all the games and not worry about,
Yeah.
Yeah.
missing some games because of Creighton.
Yeah, I just think about how difficult that would be for, like, an average Creighton fan who would does want to follow Creighton now, because instead of having to take off Thursday and Friday, at worst from work, now you gotta take off basically the whole week to do all the traveling, and, like, assuming they win their first game and you wanna keep following them, like, you basically have to take a full week off work, assuming you can do that, and then it's logistically, you just have to travel from site to site for the first
Yeah.
2 games at least, and then, hopefully they win again and you stay, but all of a sudden you've been out, away from your house for 7 days, like, the cost of that amplify with every night that you're staying out, somewhere else, so it's just like, I just think not to mention the teams that are likely gonna be in these play-in, most of them are going to be power conference teams. And so how many power conference teams are gonna have fan bases that are really excited to go there and watch, like, Texas or Texas fans gonna be super excited to go to Dayton or Indianapolis to watch them maybe get a chance to play the 6 seed. Like, I just those aren't the teams that would draw the fans. The fans would be more likely to watch, you know, the Miami of Ohio's that got there because they don't get there every year. So I think that's kinda interesting. Some of those playing games are the 16 seeds, so, like, those games, they'll have fans, but for the better quality teams that have a chance to actually advance and make a run, like, I just don't think that their fans will be as likely to travel very well, at least
Yeah,
initially.
that's a great point, but I would counter with this. That's the exact same argument they made when they expanded the football playoffs.
Yeah.
You know,
And you
people
could
people
also
are going people are going to the Rose Bowl, and then 10 days later they got to go somewhere to Indy or something and play a game. And a month before that they were at the Big Ten championship game, and then they were in and they were like, oh God, and they've had no problem filling the seats. And I get it, it's
Yeah,
football. I get it.
at least they have a week, 10 days between games, then go home. They don't have to take
Yeah, that's a
a
one
full
day
week
thing.
off
You're
work.
right.
yeah.
Yeah,
You're
yeah.
right. You're right.
The only thing is with maybe some of these power conference teams is you're gonna get more local fans that are going to be like, hey, I want to go watch Texas play.
That could be.
Or people that are close are going to want to go, hey, I can go watch Texas versus Indiana, in that first game.
Yeah,
that's
so,
fair. Yep.
you might get that instead of, hey, you're not going to, maybe not that Howard versus, Longwood or whoever it is, that's not going to draw, but, the Oklahoma versus West Virginia, that's going to get more, maybe some local people or people who could drive, 30 minutes, 45 minutes to go watch those, because, maybe they're not like national championship teams, but they're still quality basketball teams.
Well,
So,
if it was like 2 years ago, who wouldn't want to go watch Blake Harper?
yeah, exactly. Yeah.
Okay, so that leads me to the final thing. So, and I wish Schmitty was on here because we had a long discussion over the phone with this one day, and that got me thinking. Well, why don't we do a roundtable? Because we spent 15 minutes on this. Okay, so here's my idea to make the tournament better. Now that we're going to expand it, okay. There's two things kind of here. Number one is, and I've said this a million times, and a lot of the higher up people don't think about this. To me, the main reason your tournament is so successful and so well watched and so followed by everybody is the bracket. People fill out brackets. People that don't give a damn about college basketball fill out a bracket and then say watch. Okay, is this going to make it more difficult for people to fill out a bracket? Are people now going to say, well, we got these teams are, the play-ins, the at-larges is they're, there's a group of teams in there that probably can advance. So we kind of got to count these things in our bracket. Up till now, people just like, yeah, they don't even count, But here's so to maybe combat that, here's what I would do. And hear me out. I would push the tournament back one day. So your play-ins would be Wednesday, Thursday. Okay. Your actual first round when you get to 64, okay, would be Friday and Saturday. I mean, how great would Saturday be in a sports bar, right? Friday's already great. Thursday's already great now, but now most people are off on the weekend. They can, whatever. And then the regional, or the round of 32 would be Sunday, Monday. And I know you're like, everybody's like, oh, wait a minute. You got to have those on Sunday so you can watch them. But if you think about it, TV goes single game right off the get-go. So you have one game. You just bunch those together. You can do it. You can do it all staggering, starting like at 4:00, so people wouldn't have to take the whole day off. They could just take an hour off. You could do, 4:00. There's going to be 2 or 3 games, and then 6:30 a couple more, and then 9 a couple more. Because you only have 8 games that day. So that would not be I don't think that would be an issue at all. Okay. And then you just go ahead and and then just go ahead and do Thursday, Friday, Saturday, Sunday, or you can even go Friday, Saturday, Sunday, Monday if you wanted to, because you have longer time off to go to the Final Four, right? From, you still have 5 days, right? I think that would take care of the logistics problem that the NCAA is going to have getting all these teams to these sites in less than 48 hours. Less than 48 hours. They have to leave the next day. They're announcing them at 6:00 the next day. They got to be out of town. So it would give them an extra day to get that done. It would give extra day for fans to plan. It would give, you a chance to breathe and take in the whole bracket a little bit. I don't know. Just my thoughts. What do you guys think?
Ready to go for it, Michael?
Yeah, I mean, you'll get me in trouble because I'll have to take all these extra days off. But
Oh, you really wouldn't, though. You really wouldn't.
I know.
You actually could take one less day off.
Well, don't say that.
Come on.
You might have to take a Monday a little bit early, but that would be it. You would actually help people.
Yeah, I mean, I think that the NCAA is really, they're going to have to think about this logistically. And, I think we said it many, many times that they do all of these things and have all these great ideas, and they never ever take into consideration the student athlete. And this is really, they're really going to have to think about this. So, like, if that is something that, will help out the student athlete, you really do have to consider it. And I know there'll be a lot of pushback from the old school that, hey, the tournament's supposed to start on Thursday and there's nothing better than the opening day on Thursday.
Well,
But
it's supposed to be 64 teams too, and
yeah,
that's
exactly. Yeah.
long
Yep.
since
And so, but in my opinion, is there, if it moves, there won't be anything better than Friday opening and then Saturday's opening. And like you talked about, I hate the fact that Saturday they have one game at 11 o'clock and then they don't have another one till 30 minutes after that,
and they
like
can
that.
still do that. You know what I mean?
Well,
And
they
I
need to get rid
kinda
of
get
that.
Right.
I kinda
Yeah.
get well, I kinda
Yeah.
get why they do it because, like, especially not and maybe not so much Sunday, but Saturday, people have stuff going on, either work or whatever, so they don't wanna put the bulk of the games on at noon,
Yeah.
so I kinda get that, and I'm
But
obviously they've done some research and show
yeah.
that those I just think I just think that they've gone to 2. There used to just be 1 standalone, and then you would start getting some games. It just seems to me that it just seems to be a long if that first game's any kind of a blowout,
Oh yeah.
man, it's a long time till that second game starts.
Yep.
Yeah.
Yeah, but I do agree with you. I mean, I think that they're really going to have to look at this and see, what is best for these student athletes, and having, you're going to have to look closely at sites and where these teams get placed. I mean, you can't have a team playing at Dayton at 9 o'clock at night and then they're out have to go play in Sacramento on Thursday,
Right.
or something like that. Like you can't do that. You can't do it to the fans. You can't do it to the players, the coaches, things like that. So yeah, if that's something that would come to fruition, then I don't mind it.
Yeah. I think I would almost go as far as to say I would predict that will happen. I think that is I don't know how soon. I don't know if it'll be in 5 years or sooner, but I think it'll happen. Because logistically, it just gives them so much more leeway, and and yeah, with the way that they do the scheduling on Saturday and Sunday, it doesn't have a huge impact to move it to Monday. So I think it's a totally valid point. My pushback would be, um, how does it improve the fan experience from a bracket perspective? Like you said, I mean, it gives you like a little bit more time with the bracket, but my issue with the bracket now is just I don't even know like how is the bracket going to work? Is it because is it going to work the same way it has worked with 68, where on ESPN's platform or most platforms you just pick both teams
Right.
basically,
Yeah,
and if
that's what
that's
I'm saying. I think a lot of guys would say, "No, you gotta pick the team because odds are, you got Texas last year, you can throw out any number of teams. Even this year, if you could have had Oklahoma, West Virginia, we saw how well they played down the stretch in the Crown. You know, they're gonna advance, so now you've gotta say, "Well, now Oklahoma's gonna play Iowa State," or you know what I mean? Now I gotta who's gonna win that game? You can't just say, "Oh, Oklahoma or West Virginia are gonna play."
is going to be yeah.
That's what I think's gonna happen. People are gonna, like, require it, and then the average fan is just gonna say, "Screw it, that's too much, that's"
Yeah.
yeah.
It's too quick of a turnaround. Yeah,
Yeah.
I just think like there's not a great answer to how to do the bracket anymore, which is unfortunate because you either have to pick all these playing games like you said with a really tight turnaround, and it's a much uglier bracket now. It's got all these planes. It just doesn't. It's not the average fan. To your point, is just not going to be as keen to do it, in my opinion. But if you do it the other way, where you just advance both teams in your bracket and it gives people till Thursday or Friday under your proposed scheduling method, then you're in a situation where of the 32 round of 64 games, you only know 20 of the matchups. So you
Yeah.
can only really analyze 20 of the 32 matchups as opposed to what it was 28 last year. And when it was 65, it was all but one of them. So it's I just think it's filling out a bracket, regardless of how you do it, is going to be a much worse experience now going forward because
That's what I
there
worry about. That's
yeah
what I worry.
there's already so much uncertainty when you're filling out a bracket in terms of once you get down every round, you don't know what the matchups are actually going to look like. But now you don't even know what the round of 64 matchups are going to look like largely, and it's just those are the games that you would pick upsets, right? Like the 6-11s or the 5-12s. And now you don't even know if it's worth picking a matchup because you don't know who's going to advance. And it's just, um, yeah, I think it's going to be a much worse experience. So I don't know, whether the average fan will care or not. I think my guess is it couldn't hurt the impact a little bit, but ultimately we're just watering down kind of the experience, which is just unfortunate because it is like my favorite time of year. It's my favorite week, of the calendar year is March Madness, and I just think the experience is gonna be a little bit worse this year
Yeah,
and going
I think it's
forward.
something they gotta look at, because I really think they're gonna be shocked when all of a
Oh, it's
sudden
gonna be tough, yeah.
interest drops, and they'll be like, "Well, why would that be? There's more teams in there." Well, because the average Joe doesn't care anymore, you know?
The other thing too is, like, it you said when Creighton's not in it, you're excited to watch all the games. That's not the way that everyone is, like, there are other people that once their team is out, they don't care anymore. And so
Yeah,
now
that's true.
so now, like, you're inviting more teams, but a lot of those teams are gonna be eliminated before Thursday anyway. So it's like,
Yeah,
I don't
yeah.
know I don't know what good it really does,
Well,
from that perspective.
you'd still end up with 64.
Right, right. But I guess, like,
You
you're not
but you
getting the
also have a
advantage of,
bunch of
like,
people
pulling
in
in a
that.
bunch of new fans, if that makes sense. It's like
Right, I don't know. I don't know, it's gonna be, yeah. Those are all things we don't know, right? And then as far as, just to close it out, like I know everybody's like, "Oh, the upsets. I miss the upsets. Oh, I miss Cinderella's, da 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 da." And Colin Cowherd was one guy who was out in front of this, and I kinda disagreed with him at first, but I think you look at last year and he was right. Like, last year was the highest rating on TV in forever, and you think about the games were super exciting, and we had no Cinderellas, no mid-majors in there.
I
And
think
so he was right because he all along he said, "No, people wanna watch the big boys battle it out," and he was right. He was right.
yeah, there's a lot of validity to that. I do think you can have it, like, the best of both worlds there, where it's like, you get a few upsets, but then by the Sweet 16, maybe there's only 1 or 2 Cinderellas left, and you still get 6 or 7 matchups of, like, the Blue Bloods playing each other or the power conference teams. You still get those great matchups, but you have, like, the one lovable Cinderella, and then by the Elite 8, they're probably out, and so then you still get what you wanted in the first place. Um,
But
but yeah,
this year you had, except
there
for
was
one game, you had Blue Bloods playing in all the
right,
32s.
Yeah.
So
r right,
that's what
right.
brought the
So
ratings because
yeah,
they have all the
yeah,
fans.
Yep.
yeah, and yeah, it'll be interesting. It'll be interesting. I wish we weren't having to have this conversation. I wish it was still just 68. And I guess before we close it out, if you have time, I'm curious, like, to try to find another positive. Um, are you more excited to have more games on Tuesday and Wednesday? Is that something you guys are excited about?
Me, not really, because like I'll be honest, I still don't think that it really starts till Thursday or Friday. Like so like maybe if it would come to a point and Creighton's in it, that may change some things. But like I'll be honest, I don't turn into like the 16 seeds playing each other. Like that doesn't do any. Like I don't care. Like I wouldn't watch them. Normally, I'm not gonna just because it's the NCAA tournament. I'm not gonna watch them. So and then there's a few times where I don't like Texas, so I'm not gonna watch Texas play.
Well, let's talk
So
about the big gorilla in the room, though. There's more gambling.
oh yeah,
That
that's why
brings eyeballs.
and
Brings
that's and I said at the very beginning, it is a money grab, and so like, but I personally having more games on Tuesday and Wednesday doesn't move the needle for me.
and I guess maybe because we're having these plans and stuff, we talked about it hard with the bracket. I guess you could still keep it the way it is. just most people would then wait till later Wednesday or Thursday morning to fill out their bracket.
Yeah.
Because then they'd know who won.
Yeah.
You could counter argue that,
Yeah.
Yeah. So, hey, this was a great discussion, guys. Really appreciate it. Thank you so much. Really appreciate it. And yeah, Joe mentioned to me when we get him on here, we're gonna have to do random J
Oh,
again.
Yeah,
We haven't done
absolutely.
that in a long time.
yeah. Well, we got rid of all the 2025 records, right? Like we're starting fresh.
Clean slate. Clean slate.
I still have them somewhere, Mike. I just
No,
have to find them.
no.
All right, guys. Thanks so much. Hey, by the way, check out Vino Mas, live entertainment on the weekends, great wine tastings on Friday and Thursday and Friday at the 2 locations, and fabulous wine club. So check them out. And then also Infusion. They've got all their new summer beers out right now. So go to Infusion and check that out as well. Thanks so much, everybody. We'll see you tomorrow. And don't forget softball today. 3:00, I think, on ESPN Plus. They start the Big East tournament. All right. Thanks.
Thanks for having me.
Thanks, boys. That was good.